Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Donut Shop podcast. I'm here again in the Donut Shop, and I brought on a guest that I found was interesting. I've known him, I've seen him before in life in law enforcement, and then I met him again at a golf tournament, representing a law firm that helps out law enforcement and first responders. So I want to welcome on James Dean, Jimmy Dean, Jim Dean. We'll go by Jim. He's got one of those names. So welcome to the Donut Shop. Thanks for traveling here. You drove here.
Yeah, no, hey, I appreciate it. It's worth the effort. You know, a message that I'm eventually going to get to, I think is really important to get out. So anytime I get a medium to jump on that platform, it's awesome. So the ride's easy for me because the message means a lot to me. So I appreciate you having me, brother.
Yeah. So you work, you kind of almost like a sales job or a communication job. You're driving all over the state doing this work. So you're down here for an event. That, you know, when the episode drops, it may not be time specific, but right. You know, I know it as Kagan's Climb.
Yeah.
I mean, I could speak to it a little bit, but it's one of our former fire captains from my agency. I'm not allowed to name my agencies, but for the agency that I work for, he's a fire captain, and ended up taking his life. And it's one of those good messages. And I was just thinking about it. I'm like, maybe we'll get that out first, right at the beginning.
Yeah, that's amazing because, you know, I am a retired first responder. Spent 34 years in the job as a deputy sheriff in Hernando County. So, you know, back then when I first started, you didn't talk about those things. Yeah. So our law firm is big. They're very benevolent. Jeff Bichler and Longo are big supporters of not just representing the public or the first responder community, but also backing them. Because there's one thing to say, hey, I can represent you, but it's another thing to say, hey, I put my money by where my mouth is and I back you as well. And they back a lot of these charitable events, and they're big with these the Second Alarm Project. They're huge with mental health awareness, suicide prevention with law enforcement, which is huge because back in the day, we didn't talk about that. Yeah. You know, you put your big boy pants on, you lace your shoes up tight and go to work and worry about that when you get home, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's a huge thing. And like I said, from being on the front lines for many years, it's a huge supporter, and it's great to see the first responder careers recognize the importance of addressing that. So
yeah, it's important, and times change, things change, society changes. So, you know, people that are getting involved sometimes in the career are different, or maybe were raised different. But I mean, we're talking about guys that have been in the career for 20, 30 years that are having mental health issues, that, you know, are old school guys. So, you know, it's just, maybe we just didn't talk about it. Maybe the agencies didn't mention it or bring it to the forefront when something tragic happens to one of the officers or deputies or whoever, firemen. And it's scary, it's sad, and it's important that, you know, we always talk about it. I've done a few episodes with different prior law enforcement, prior military that deal with mental health, and it's a hot button item to talk about. And it doesn't always work for everybody, and there's different avenues to take. And I feel with shows like mine, we can sort of bring to the forefront different ways.
Yeah, you have to humanize it, because you know firsthand as well as I do that mental health knows no boundaries. Mm-hmm. It's not social economic. It's not, oh, I'm educated so it doesn't affect me. Mental health affects everybody, and we think a lot about like PTSD. We think of the soldiers, and rightfully so because of what they see. But the thing that people don't realize about first responders and the PTSD is that a lot of times it's that slow buildup. Yeah, it's that even if it's not a super stressful day, you tend to meet. Most of the people you meet are not having a great day. If you have law enforcement in your life, or even first responders in your life, fire rescue, you're probably not having a good day. And people don't realize just over time, call after call like that, even though it's not that high stress, you know, TV action, chasing, running, shooting, all that stuff you see on TV, it's that low level, you know, pressure and stress. It just keeps building and building and building. People don't realize that. And that does take its toll on a lot of people, myself included, through the years.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that thing that people are always going to be like, you know, oh, the job changed you. Well, it kind of did, and sometimes we don't want to admit it, like, oh yeah, I'm still that same 23-year-old dude I was when I started, but you're really not. There's all the experience that you gained about crowds, about nightclubs, buildings. There's ways that we handle ourselves sometimes in those busy activity areas, and then there's just sometimes the minor depression of, no, I don't feel like going anywhere tonight. I don't feel like, like I just want to sit home, I just want to pour myself a drink, or whatever, and then just go to bed or watch TV. No, I don't want to watch the news. I've seen enough of that.
Absolutely.
All that stuff. So it does change you over time, and the same thing goes for the military with, seeing your squad mates, your platoon partners, getting injured, getting killed, in the line of duty. And then just, the constant stress of dealing with, eyes on, because we were talking about before, with, body cams, with in-car cameras, all that stuff that's, looking at you and kind of keeping a little big brother thought in your head.
Yeah, it's definitely, modern technology has been great for the business, but it's also added some stress levels to it, and people don't realize it. So, and you are correct. You will never be the same once you've done these jobs for a long time. It sounds silly, but I'll never be able to not pull up to a car in front of me and point out that's got an expired tag, all the time. I'll be 80 years old and be like, there's an expired tag.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's a silly part of the job, but you can't, you're always, why did that guy run out of Circle K?
Yeah.
Oh, and then you realize he grabbed his wallet and he's running right back in. But it's those little things that the average person doesn't see. So yeah, then those are beneficial things, because it's always great to have more eyes on in your community. Most of us live and serve the communities. We live where we serve our communities. And if we move, we're still going to serve those communities, because that's our new home. But it does change you. It does make you a different person. It does make you cynical.
Yeah.
It can make you. I've seen things that I know I did great. It made me a better person, but I know I've seen some things that have made me not so much a better person.
Yeah.
So it's out there.
Yeah. It's funny you say you pick specifically the expired tag, and that's probably a lot of us, especially working before computer days, where you could run every tag quickly. Yeah. You had to go off of, back in the day, Florida had not just the yellow, but we had different color stickers, and so that was even easier to recognize. And then it went into the yellow, and you're just always looking, and that's just a quick, easy way to do a primary stop, to get a car, and then check the person out. Hey, if there's any warrants, if there's any suspensions, or if you at the time smell drugs or so it's just those, you always had to have those primary things that weren't profiling, that were actual legal reasons to stop.
Yeah.
And so tags, to a lot of us, are just ingrained in our eyes. They just go directly to it. So
yeah, but remember when you first started, you'd be like, expired tag. Now you're like, oh, I think that tag, it's expired. And they do this, and you're like, So believe me, it aged me a lot of ways, eyes especially. So I know it. I'll never be the same, but I don't regret anything I've ever done.
Maybe that's why senior guys don't do traffic stops as much, because they can't read it.
They can't.
It's just hard.
And then if we don't have we sure as heck can't read the license number on there without our glasses. So. Verbal warning.
I had a guy yelling at me. His license was super faded, and it was a guy I arrested last week or 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, dude, you are not coming up in the thing. And I had written his driver's license number on my pad, and I'm like, dude, you're not coming up. Like the systems must be down. And he's in the back seat, and he'd been talking mad trash to me the entire time I was arresting him and everything. And he's like, bro, are you a fucking idiot? My last name doesn't start with I, it starts with J. And I'm like, well, your DL was like faded as hell, and like my eyes are pretty good, so I must have just it must have been the J, but I wrote it as an I, and J is in my name, so I know how to write a J, so it's not a handwriting error. So I was like, all right, dude, like, my bad. And I ran it. Oh, there you are. And he's like, you're such a fucking idiot. And he's just cussing at me and yelling at me.
And the only thing you do at that point is just agree with him. Yeah. I'm sorry. We make mistakes.
Yeah. And hey, you're right. You got one on me there, buddy, but where are you and where am I? And not long after that, he decided to start smashing his head on the back window of my car, and he ended up getting Baker-acted as well. And he's got a nice big scar that we didn't even do to him. He did to himself. So, poor guy.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, he's, it's just a great citizen. So you said Hernando County?
Yes, I actually started my career. I started in the jail in Pasco County. So
Okay.
I've seen kind of both sides of law enforcement. Great place to start your career, to be honest with you, because inside there, I came from typical, I was born and raised in North Jersey, came from a typical middle-class background. We didn't get in trouble. My friends didn't get arrested. Our family members didn't go in and out of prison. So for me, that was like all I knew about jail was the movies.
Yeah. And
So,
go.
yeah. So when I started, but I tell you, to transition, I never wanted to be a lifelong jail guard. And for any of you people in corrections out there, I have the utmost respect for you all to do the career in there, because it is just as stressful. You might not have all the legal stuff that on the road does as far as making decisions about arresting people, but the stress level in a jail or a prison, you can have that. So they have my utmost respect. But it did teach me how to communicate with people. It did teach me, that other side of life that, I have to be honest, was foreign for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was a baseball kid. I was a sports kid. I was you came home when the porch lights, came on. So for me to delve into that lifestyle, I didn't know anybody like that. So it taught me really quick how to read people, how to see when the trouble's coming, how you walk in and read a housing unit. So it really did set me up for a great career in law enforcement. Unfortunately, they didn't want to release you once you're in the jail back then. This is back in the early 1990s. I started my career in 1990. So at that point, I jumped ship and I went up to Hernando County to specifically work for who I think is the greatest sheriff ever to sign my paycheck. I can't speak for anybody else. I know if you're out there, some of you love yours. I've had some good ones, but the greatest one, I went to work for Sheriff Tom Mylander in Hernando County, and just an amazing individual. Mm-hmm. And thankful for the opportunity that he got for me to work there. And I spent 30 years there.
Hell yeah.
I started out, I did a lion's share of my career on the road. It was great for my family. We got divorced when my daughter was very young. So working the patrol schedule worked great for raising her. Did a little bit of transport. Way too boring. Armed Uber driver with people that don't tip. Yeah. Not a job I enjoyed. But I did some school resource officer work, especially at an alternative school. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed it. It was a smaller school, so you can really get to know the kids and know why they are the way they are.
So alternative school, for those that may not understand, that's like where, if you get kind of bounced out of several different schools, or you're just a troublemaker. So that school is like almost like you're putting what would be the worst of the worst, most pain in the ass kids all together in one school. So,
but the nice thing is, though, is a lot of times, like I said, I grew up, stay at home mom, basically white collar, middle class, suburbia. Mm-hmm. And so when you see these kids and see what you're sending them home to, you really, there but the grace of God go a lot of people, and they don't understand that term. When I look at these kids and I'm like, man, I had it made.
Yeah.
These kids go home to such
trauma or problems,
totally messed up absentee houses, foster care, drug addiction, violence, domestic violence, parents in prison, and you're trying to get them to listen to a teacher.
Yeah.
They don't have that structure. So once again, and working in the jail kind of, it gave me that good platform to understand people that I don't necessarily associate with and how to relate to them. So very enjoyable. I truly enjoyed it. Schedule didn't work out, went back to the road. And then I did some transport. Like I said, long, boring days on the road, just not for me, not enough excitement. Still had a couple of years left in me, wanted something a little bit more to go out on. And finished my career the last probably close to 8 years in community policing. Mm-hmm. In Hernando County. I can tell you, it's like the apartment maintenance guy. Okay. We did everything.
Yeah.
We did community events. We helped with vice and narcotics. We'd be out on homicide investigations. We'd be helping the road guys out. basically, if they needed a position filled, we did it. And then when we weren't doing that, we were doing community service related events and crime watch meetings and public service announcements.
Yeah.
A great way to end my career.
Yeah. So like you said, you're a baseball guy. So it's just that you were that utility player for the police department, the jack of all trades. You could pitch, you could catch, you could run first base, wherever they needed you to go, wherever in the lineup. When I did that position, we didn't necessarily go work with Vice or anything like that, but we did a lot of stuff, and kind of the quote was, whatever falls off the chief's desk, basically. And it's just, jobs to be named later, is what the position should be called, like.
And at times it should have been called firefighter, because I have to be honest, we put out a lot of fires.
Oh, totally.
And a lot of those things that come in, hey, fix this.
Yeah.
Get out there and handle this. So, we put water on the flame, so to speak, and all that. But I enjoyed it because, to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons I enjoyed the road. I never did the detective side of law enforcement because I just couldn't see myself coming in knowing I had those 18, 20, 25 cases stacked on me. I like the road. I like to hit it and run, 45 minutes, solve it or move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. And community policing had more time to address the issue, so that was fun. But as far as, come in today, I might be up at, 3:00 in the morning getting ready to help Vice serve a search warrant. And the following day, I might be, covering a school as a school resource officer.
Yeah.
So every day was a little different. And I have to be honest, I made the last 8 years of my career. I got heavily involved in our Explorer Post, our junior deputy program. I actually, when I retired, I stayed on as a volunteer to help that post out. And the head advisor for that, Jason, became one of my best friends at the office, and I always credit him with the things he brought into my life with Explorers at the end of my career, and crime prevention really rejuvenated the career. For a lot of times an older guy, hey, I just want to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
I just want to do my time and get out. And it really made it enjoyable. I really, it made the last 8 years something that...
Yeah, because you end up finding that you've got a lot of, knowledge to impart on society, knowledge to impart in the department and stuff like that. And you say the Explorer Post, and that's one of the places, like when we were at the golf tournament that I met you at, and I'm looking at him, and those of you that can't tell, I mean, you might be able to look on the main camera and see the disparity in size between us. He's 6'10", so he's a giant person, and so I'm like, dude, there's something that I've worked with Hernando, or a different county, that I've met other people, and it's like, all right, that would be either like probably not field force, honor guard. I've worked with a lot of different agencies for funerals and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, yeah, but there's a guy in Coconut Creek that's your size, that shaved head. So that's probably who I was mixing you up with. And so he reminded me, he said, maybe the Explorer Post. And yeah, we would do these state competitions, especially through COVID and stuff in Orlando. And, where there's this big ballroom, and we're in there with the kids getting breakfast or meals or whatever. And I just see this giant dude walking across the room, and it's just, I never talked to him, but it's something that sticks out in your mind.
I stand out in the crowd, that's for sure.
Definitely. So, it's one of those where I'm like, when I see him later in life, it's like, I know you. Why do I know you? At least have seen you when you work on the other side of the state from me. Why do I know you? And so that's what, it's the Explorer Post history, which is cool. It's always fun doing that. And our kids just competed in the local South Florida competition over spring break. We do a competition. But yeah, I'm not as involved myself anymore, just because they're trying to. The main guy, he's retiring in July. I retire in December. So they're kind of like, hey, you come in for some trainings, but we got to kind of get some other guys running this post, so that you're not, so that it doesn't end right with you.
Hernando's in the same way. Jason just kind of picked his successor, because he's got another year. But like I said, a great program, because and you talk to, we just opened up our own academy now, so we have guys going, and young girls going right from the Explorer program to the academy to road patrol, and the FTOs are just mesmerized by these kids, for lack of a better term, because you figure you go to the academy, you get what, 3 or 4 traffic stops, maybe if you're lucky,
Yeah.
and then you move on. If you're in the Explorer post, you might do 50, or, if you're on the state team, when you make that for a couple of years, which a lot of our kids do, you might do a couple hundred traffic stops.
Yeah.
So these kids are coming in with a lot of this knowledge. And I'll tell you, you've been there, you see some of those state competitions. I put some of those kids that we've trained up against some experienced officers.
Totally. And then, yeah, that's what some of the advisors, some of the full-time officers they're judges during these scenarios and these competitions. And they've said in the awards ceremony at the end, they're like, I'd take you as a backup over a lot of the guys that back me up sometimes on the road, with some of the tactics and the abilities that these kids have. So it's a good thing, good way to get, it's a little bit of a farm system, if you want, where we're training these just like you would in Little League and in high school ball and travel ball and stuff like that in baseball. So, we're working with these kids, getting to know them. And even if they don't, I always said to people, even if they didn't become a police officer or get into first responder, law enforcement in their life, they've become a better citizen. They've become a better person.
Oh, absolutely.
Granted, that same guy that I was arresting, that I was messing up his driver's license number, he said he used to be a police explorer for Hallandale Beach down in, down here in South Broward. But, he probably flunked out. He was probably for a year, and they don't really do a lot of competitions. So he didn't really get good exposure to be a good American.
You know as well as I do, this job is not for everybody. And there's people, you can have all heart, you can have all the heart in the world, but some people are just not cut out to do this job. And it's difficult to tell somebody that, but even with the Explorers, you see that. You see some kids where especially you've been doing it for as many years as we have. Yeah. Some of the kids, they're all heart, but they're not going to make it. But you can also, mold them into, being a better person. And you can also, sometimes road isn't for you, but think about corrections, think about first responder. A lot of our kids go into the military.
Yeah.
A lot of them went into the military, come out, and now they're coming back and being even more experienced,
Yeah, because that's what I always told them. And when I worked in the high school and I'd have these 18-year-olds come into my office crying, saying, hey, I don't know what to do with my life, and I'm graduating in 3 months and I'm scared. Like, should I just go be a police officer? And I'm like, absolutely not. I don't want you working next to me. And it's not because you're not a nice person or a good person. I need you to go out and get experience in life. And we're seeing nowadays, just with, I'm going to kind of spitball it right here, just that with some of the disconnection that we have as society because of the phones, because of the internet, being able to communicate and not be face to face with people, the generations coming up are losing some of that ability to communicate, that ability to get involved, to go hands-on with people. So I'm telling these kids, I want you 26, 27. I was 23, but I was a little different. I want you older. I want you to go out and get experience. I want you to go to the military. I want you to go work a job. Just be a employee somewhere.
And the 23-year-olds of today aren't our 23s either, because they're raised on the social media. I tell people all the time, I said they probably have access and know more, but it technically have been exposed to less of life, because life isn't in the screen in front of you. And, it's kind of funny, but I think if you haven't broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend face to face and not by text message, you probably need to do that before you become a cop, because you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to have compassion. You need to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And with some of these young kids, we're not seeing that. And you do really need that ability to read people, you can learn some of it on the job, but you got to come in with some experience. And I always tell people, I said, these kids are living at home, they're starting the job at 19 years old, they're going out and buying brand new Mustangs, they haven't been stressed with paying a bill. They haven't had that life of, hey, do I buy food or do I pay the electric bill? And that helps, because it affords you that situation where I'd never been in this situation, but I can at least sympathize with you. I know what life is like. I know what stressors can do to a person. Doesn't justify your actions, but at least I can sympathize. Even if I arrest you, I can still do it with a lot more respect and understanding.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
And sometimes that's lacking. the there but the grace of God go I mentality. Sometimes I think we need a little bit more of that. Maybe just not in first responder, but just all across the board in life. Because there's a lot of people out there. And, we talked about the mental health earlier. You don't know what people are suffering from. You don't know what's going on in somebody else's head, until it just, unfortunately, sometimes it just explodes in violence or, making bad decisions. So a lot of times, if you have a little experience in life, maybe more apt to pick up on that a little quicker in somebody that you're dealing with.
Yeah, you brought up you made a statement a second ago that sounds interesting, and it could almost be a good interview process question. Have you ever broken up with a significant other in person? Like and they're going to look at you and they're going to be like, dude, really? What does this have to do with the job? But you drive a good point with the communication, with the ability to deal with stress, crisis, all that kind of stuff. And just not that we're going to score that a 0 or a 5 on your interview, but I think it's something that could be a bonus point or something of knowledge. So I'm going to mention that to some of the guys that do interviews, and if there's a chance that they can go off the cuff or off the script in what they ask, that might be a good question, because it really is. I've done it before in my life, and it's at the time it might be one of the worst days of your life, and so that's always something.
We all get through it, but
Yeah.
it gains this valuable experience. At the time, it doesn't seem like it, but looking back on it, you realize, this isn't the end of the world, and it wasn't so bad after all. Or maybe you get some feedback where you're thinking, hey, they're thinking the same thing I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was just the first one to say it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, very good. All right, well, let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Hey guys, I'm sure that there's many of us that are aging and we've thought about hormone replacement therapy. I visited my doctors and discussed it, and I'm still kind of on the fence and not really sure what I want to do. But now I think I've kind of found it, and I know that we could all use a boost of testosterone in our life. Well, check out the best in the game, Human Performance Team. It connects you with doctors via telehealth, and you could submit your labs that you've maybe already been done, or you can get fresh ones done. They offer a variety of services like primary care, urgent care, weight loss, and even mental health. We all know that, these jobs weigh on us and our mental health. Jump over to hptrt.com and use the code DSP for a continuous discount. Use the code DSP and get on a road to better health. All right, welcome back. Yep. So as it said in that commercial, HPTRT, I'm still going to keep talking about how I'm going to do a video and explain how I'm doing one of their programs, but I haven't done that video yet, and I'll put it out at some point soon. So yeah, HPTRT, use code DSP, and you get 20% off their program for Human Performance Team. It's kind of a testosterone and stuff, like as we're getting towards, as we're aging, testosterone gets a little lower, and we've really got to, depending on how you want to live your life, there's things that testosterone replacement can help you with, better sleep, better focus and concentration, better gains in the gym, muscle regrowth, all that kind of stuff that sort of tapers off and falls off the edge when you're getting older. So this is
know that one well, trust me.
So so we'll talk about that. But so 34 years in law enforcement with the career. I'm getting towards the end of that too. So tell me sort of like how that transition, works out for you and gets you where you are today.
Well, it's funny because they say, how do you know? And all the old guys, it's like, it's like everything else. Like when you break up with that girl, people tell you you're going to be all right. When you get a divorce, you're going to be all right. And then eventually you are. And then you come to the next phase of life, which is, hey, I've been deputy dean. I'm deputy dean, in Hernando County is kind of suburban and rural, smaller area. A lot of people being 6'10" and being on the, the road off and on for close to 30 years. Yeah. Everybody knew me. Yeah. Couldn't go out to dinner, couldn't go out to lunch, couldn't go to, Home Depot, deputy dean, and people are like, how do you know? And I said, you know what? I think I'm done. I think, and I did. I knew it wasn't the same job for me as much as I loved the people I worked with and the career. I just knew it wasn't as enjoyable. And at that point, when you don't enjoy something, then you have to start worrying, especially in this career. It's not like another career where if you make a mistake, what's the big deal? I'll fix that tomorrow. I'll spackle that tomorrow. Law enforcement, you make a giant mistake, you could ruin an entire career in milliseconds.
Yeah.
And, at that point, I was like, I don't want to get hurt. I'm getting older, the back, the knees. It's time to go. I'm going to travel.
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy life. I'm going to chill. I'm going to get all the projects done on my house. I'm going to read all the books I still want to read. I'm going to learn to play the piano. All these great things. Yeah. Work is the farthest thing from my mind.
Yeah.
And then
yeah,
I go to an FOP conference in June of 2020. Vice president of 164, the Hernando County Lodge. I still maintain that position with the lodge. I love being around the guys and the girls. I love being part of the community events we do. So I stayed on with that, but I'm still working 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks away from retirement, enjoying a nice little,
post out
FOP conference up in Orlando at the Roslyn Center. And work is the farthest thing from my mind. My president of my lodge, Wayne, comes to me and says, hey, go up and see Christine Kaleji. She's an attorney with Bichler and Longo, and she was in the vendor area at the conference. I got a job for you. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not even retired yet.
Yeah.
Second of all, I have no idea what I want to, I'm thinking I'm going to be like an Uber driver somewhere down the road, make some gambling money or some traveling money. And I says, and a law firm? And I knew about them, but I didn't know everything about them. He says, look, they represent nothing but first responders, firemen, law enforcement, corrections. That's all they do. She's representing me. She's great. He just couldn't say enough about the firm. And they had been to some of our lodge meetings, but I didn't feel like I had any workers' comp issues. And I sat in the back, in the bar, pouring the drinks and just kind of loosely listened when they did their presentations. And this will come into play later. I'll tell you, I should have listened to some of those things when we talk about that. But I go upstairs and I talk to Christine. And I'm like, a law firm. I'm a cop. We don't go work for law firms.
And you have no law degree, all that kind of stuff. So what use am I? I'm not a paralegal.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're thinking. Like my mentality would be like, who works for a law firm? You probably have like admin assistants that are probably more like paralegals also. Then you've got paralegals, then you've got your junior attorneys and all that kind of stuff. And you work your way up and then your named partners kind of stuff. So it's like, but what do you need? Security? Maybe an investigator, but you also mentioned earlier, you've never been really of that detective mind frame. So maybe I'm not an investigator either. Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah. So I go up, I talk, and she's not only is she a great person, she's a great attorney too, but at this point, I don't know that much about her. And, I talked to her and she said, listen, our previous marketing rep basically, has moved on. She was a great person, did great for the firm. We've been having people inside the firm fill in, and we've tried to get some people to do our marketing at our community events, come in the conferences, go in the golf tournaments where we met. And, the person that we had in that position didn't work out. We're thinking if we want to market to first responders and we want to be able to communicate for first responders, maybe we should think about hiring a first responder.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
It's clear. It's a rogue podcast. Sorry, we got a kid screaming in the background anyways, out in the main lobby of the Dunkin' Donuts. So,
Somebody wants to sell me something, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, basically they say, look, we're looking for a first responder. We're looking for a retired officer. It was FOP conference, so obviously a police officer, deputy sheriff. And we want somebody to go out and talk about our firm and make some headway into these events and this community that, for the most part is probably a little apprehensive of lawyers getting involved in their lives.
And that's what, I talked about it actually yesterday. I recorded an episode with a friend, the Point Man podcast. Sorry, guys. And we talked about that. Law enforcement, we get most of our knowledge through each other. And sometimes it makes it to the news because guys are learning about getting PPP loans during the pandemic, and oh yeah, create this little business and then you can get, you know, $8,000 and cover yourself and all that kind of, and then now they're all fired and going to jail. But we tend to give each other advice because we kind of all feel that we're in the same shoes with each other. We're dealing with some of the same stuff. We're ingrained in law enforcement that you have the fellow officer rule. So you're supposed to be able to, as a crime is concerned, trust another officer to give you witness testimony on another crime. So it's like, why not trust another law enforcement officer? So, yeah, I mean, it's a smart marketing ploy to get involved with law enforcement and be at these, rather than some corporate golf tournament, you're going to a law enforcement golf tournament that's either to benefit, like ours was, a specific officer that had been injured in the line of duty, or just a general fund golf tournament that's law enforcement based.
And those are amazing events. And like part of it is too is, you know, I left the job behind and I don't regret it, but I still miss the guys and girls I worked with. So now it's even better because now I get to talk to people from all over the state and learning about fire and all. You know, we're cops. We think that their only purpose is to go to Publix and block our last lane of travel when we're at an accident, you know, making our blood pressure go up. And we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. But to learn all the things they're exposed to with the bunker gear, the fire gear, not just the foam you hear about on TV and their cancers, and getting to see that side and all the stress and the politics that they have to deal with. We think they just come out and they go back to bed, and I have a whole new respect for the firefighters. But getting back to the conference, so I talked to Christine, and I was intrigued, but I wasn't sold. I was like, do I really want to go to work right away? They were looking for somebody to start, you know, relatively soon. Hadn't even retired yet. But I was intrigued enough. I went to their law firm. So I just, you know, Googled Bichler and Longo, the law firm, and started to read about their attorneys and read about what they really represent and what they do. And that's what really sold me on wanting to work for them, because what I found out, the information, I got brief information from her, but when I really dug in myself and started to see, and the fact that really impressed me was they only represent first responders. They'll do referrals and whatnot, but for the most part, their core business is representing nothing but first responders for work-related issues. You know, the state heart-lung bill, the workers' comp issues, the PTSD issues, the repetitive injury issues with the back and the knees that so many first responders, the hearing loss, things we can get into in a little bit.
I feel like you're going down a laundry list of things that I could claim that I see, but yeah.
But so I. At that point, you know, been a cop for 34 years. I think my last application was still handwritten. So I talked to my daughter, who was finishing college at the time, very educated, very smart, very social media savvy, like a lot of our young people are. She sends me a resume web builder. So I do this whole resume. I do this cover letter. I send it off to them. They were impressed enough. They want to set up a Zoom meeting with Jeff Bichler and Paolo Longo, the founding partners, and Christine, one of the other partners, and Ann, who is just a sweetheart. She's the office manager. And that was the first time I really got a chance to talk to Jeff and Paolo on the Zoom call, and listening to their passion and what they were about, what they wanted me to do as far as furthering the representation of the first responder community. I was sold. Wasn't sure they were sold, but I was sold. And lo and behold, a couple of days later, Paolo and Christine call me, and very, very short negotiation, we come up with a position for me of first responder liaison with the law firm of Bichler and Longo. So that is how I guess you can say, my second kind of associated first responder field started. So I went to work for that. Cool. And like I said, we do a lot of events. We do the big conferences. You said you saw me at the fire rescue conference in Orlando in January. We do the FOP conferences, fire conferences. We do the big conferences. But the nice thing about the law firm is they're super benevolent. They're super behind the cause that we serve, like we talked about earlier off the record, the second hour, maybe earlier on, the Second Alarm Project, the Brendan Arlington fund, which supports mental health and suicide prevention and first responders, the Kagan's Klein. And those are the things that sold me on the law firm, because it wasn't just about pushing clients in the door. It wasn't just about, get me clients so I can make money. It's about educating the community that I was a part of for so many years and knew so little about the benefits that were afforded to me. And then on top of that fact that they're so benevolent that they're not just, oh, there's only going to be, 5 people at this event. Oh, we're not going to waste our time with that.
Yeah.
There is no event that they will not waste their time with if it means getting the word out about the benefits available to first responders and the representation if needed. And that's what really sold me on them, going to work with them. And my mantra now is really, when I talk to people, and I talk to firemen, and I talk to corrections officers and law enforcement officers, is don't be me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was educated on being a cop.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was. I felt like I learned my trade. I constantly went to the gun range. And just like anybody else that does a job, you're always upgrading your resume. I went to conferences. I went to the training classes and got my certifications for radar and DUI, and made sure I was qualified on the gun range, and would go out, and shoot, on my own and shoot during open range. But I didn't educate myself on a lot of the benefits that were there for me. I just figured that was somebody else's job. Somebody will take care of me if I get sick or hurt. And that's where I made a huge mistake. And I'm not going to badmouth anybody, because I don't think a lot of HR, I don't think a lot of agencies are familiar with all the benefits that are out there for us. And I can tell you, between the high blood pressure and all the other things that I have some health issues, some back issues. The 6'10", 34 years of being a cop, wearing that belt, wearing that vest, jamming my big behind in a Crown Victoria for like the first 19 years of my career. Those are all things that are compensatable under workers' comp, and I didn't know that. So when I went to work for them, then I sat down and then they gave me some training. You want to talk about the light bulb going off of like what? The things I probably should have paid attention to, but I sat at the back of the FOP behind the bar having a cocktail and kind of half listening, because you think, what do people think? Workers' comp. I get hurt, right?
I get hurt, I'm out. Either I'm done with the job. I've done it a few, I was on the heart bill myself because I had AFib at the early part of my career, because I was burning the candle at both ends, working midnights, drinking on my off times and stuff like that, and juggling women and just living that life. And so it caused AFib, and I went into work and all that, and I spent the night in the hospital, all that kind of stuff. And I went through it for a little while, and I got maximum medical improvement and all that kind of stuff, and moved on, which I probably, in hindsight, probably should have never accepted, because then it kind of closes that door for you. But, as officers, one of the things, even as a guy who was heavily involved in my FOP on the board, you only think of labor attorneys, that's who we like. My FOP isn't just like a benevolent, we have our
negotiator contracts.
We have perks, so we deal with the negotiations. So we have labor attorneys, and then you also have those labor attorneys also then will represent you for employment stuff, like IA disciplines. Yes. So that's really probably one of the only law firm type ideas that we think of when it comes to that. And sometimes you're right, meetings, they do, different attorneys or different types of services do come through, and people don't pay attention. And it's good that you get involved. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, was to really kind of do that, to speak out and push the message, that there's things that, we let go of. Early in my career, I pulled a tree out of the road with a coworker and herniated one of my discs, but whatever, battle through it. You keep going to work. Once in a while, you have to bang in, because you're like, my hips are jacked up. I can't even I can't even put my left foot on the floor. So yeah, I definitely can't do 11 and a half hours. And I was on a detail, and I'm like, hey, I've never called out on a detail, but I'm gonna have to go home because this is murder. Me sitting in the car, and so I've dealt with that. And now I've remedied it myself. But there's things that we don't know.
And you've hit the nail on the head with so many things, like you talked about the AFib, and you probably let that case close, right?
Yep, I let it close. I took my $1,600 from the state because I was like, all right, cool. And it was a time in my life where I was like, I could really use $1,600. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah. And workers' comp is banking on people just like you and me that don't know our benefits. And I never knew, several car accidents, broken fingers, fighting this one, wrestling this one, herniating discs and everything else. And then you get, you've reached maximum medical MMI, you're good. And they claim to sign off on you. Oh, that's, they love the rubber stamp. That's a pre-existing condition. And we don't know that we have the right to keep that case open.
Yeah.
So when I sat down with Jeff Bichler and Paolo Longo and really got schooled, and Christine and Vinny and all the attorneys over there have all given me, each one has a little bit more, I continue to learn about this job, but I learned so many things about workers' comp, repetitive injuries that I had no idea. I didn't really pay attention to the heart bill. And until somebody tells you, we sit around and we talk about, hey, you got high blood pressure, right? What do you want? Oh, I'm on lisinopril. I'm on losartan. Right? And I don't know how many times I had that conversation with people, but not once during any one of those conversations earlier in my career did somebody say to me, that's under the state heart bill. That's workers' compensation. And then when they started talking about this, I'm like, what? And they're like, the state heart bill says as long as you were hired with a clean bill of health, you had a pre-employment physical that showed no heart abnormalities, you didn't disclose any previous heart issues, and you have a work-related heart issue, it doesn't have to be on the job. You can be on a cruise in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and God forbid something happens to you, that's considered job-related under the state heart bill. And I said, what? And they said, all of it, high blood pressure, AFib, stents, blockages, all the way up to a heart attack, even some strokes. Some strokes can be attributed back to heart disease.
Cholesterol?
Cholesterol in itself is not considered basically like heart disease.
Okay.
But because that does need to be controlled, but obviously if you don't control that, it's going to lead to higher blood pressure. So once the heart issue is diagnosed, cholesterol in itself is not
the issue.
Is not the issue. But if it leads to another heart-related issue, then therefore it's now covered under the heart bill. And then the lung bill is totally separate. That only benefits the firefighter side of it. Okay. There's I believe.
So I should stop running into those smoky apartments to pull people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're not going to stop because we're just wired so differently. Yeah. But I will say I've been in a couple of those, and once again, newfound respect for the firemen. Yeah. Because my personal feeling is fire should, two things. It should warm you up, around it with a drink, and it should cook your food. Yeah. Anything else, I don't want to do it. So once again, if there's any firemen out there, namaste. I appreciate it because I'm learning a lot more about your lives than I ever knew before. Yeah. And realizing that you have just as many trials and tribulations. But getting back to it, so once you're diagnosed with that heart condition, basically you have to be diagnosed by a medical professional, which is a, doctor. It can be a walk-in clinic, can be your own personal doctor, can be, the emergency room if it's something that you do while you're working. And they diagnose you with even something as simple as high blood pressure. That is a heart-related issue. Yeah. And it not only should it or could it, but it should be filed under workers' comp because you're covered for the rest of your life. Uh-huh. But nobody tells you that. HR, and I don't want to badmouth departments out there because there's some great ones. I learned there's some departments that are like, oh no, our HR is on top of this, our union's on top of this, everything is on top of it. But there's a lot of them either through cost saving, or through just lack of knowledge.
Yeah, lack of experience.
Don't know all these things out there. Like I said, we think about workers' comp, and it's simply just, I get hurt. get in a car wreck, or I wrestle a guy, or you push, pull a car, a limb off the road, or you push a car, you hurt your back. Oh, that's workers' comp.
Yeah, or you
But
just got to go to the walk-in clinic. The doctor's gonna, oh, you're fine, not give you any kind of imaging or anything like that, and give you some pain pills and send you back on the road.
And the thing that I didn't realize is you don't have to settle for that. You don't have to just say, okay, close my case. You can keep that case open your entire career, and all that requires you go to the doctor, a workers' comp doctor, once a year.
Yeah.
Once you get over that year period, you're done. There's probably a little bean counter at workers' comp that he's probably counting down the days.
Yes.
And 1 year, click, case closed. All right, no money for you, no more benefits for you.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of it, there's a lot of other related issues that I didn't realize. You talked about it. We're full of pride. We are so full of pride. We don't want to let our zone partners down. A lot of times, maybe it's not for the people up here in the department, but it's definitely for the people here and here at that either side of that read-off table. Your zone partners. You don't want to let them down. Oh, we're shorthanded. My back hurts. This, that. Right? We go into work. All right. At the end of the day, 34 years later, who cares about that?
It really,
your buddies don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Who really suffers that sacrifice? You and your family.
Yep.
Right. And we don't think about all those benefits that we're leaving on the table, but the repetitive injuries, the knees, the back, even if you spend a lot of time on the computer, the corporal tunnel, those are all things that can be attributed to work and should be at least filed under workers' comp claim. And if I hear stories time and time again, even with blood pressure issues, where people have tried to file it and their HR department says, oh no, that's not work related. You didn't have that diagnosed while you were working.
Yeah.
The heart bill says otherwise. The heart bill says that you don't have to be at work. I heard stories, it has to be within 12 hours at the end of your shift, or within 2 days at the end of your shift. It doesn't matter if you are working and you are diagnosed with something. It doesn't matter if you're on or off the job at the time of the diagnosis. All that matters is it's diagnosed, it's documented, it wasn't a pre-existing condition, and it affects your work. And when I say affects your work, you need some kind of time off from work. Light duty, or at least time off. It doesn't need to be days and weeks and months. I mean, obviously some conditions require that, but it can be something as simple as just take the rest of the shift off, come back and see me before we clear you to go back if it's a blood pressure issue.
Yeah.
And then it can be regulated and monitored. But all those things should be filed under workers' compensation. And we're not told about these things. And this is what Bichler and Longo does. That's all they do. They serve the entire state. They're willing to serve everywhere from the Florida-Bama border to Key West and everything in between. And I know that because they will send me anywhere to try and spread this message out. I drive all over the state. Got a little Toyota, little Scion, little box you'd never think I would get out.
Oh, you got a toaster.
Yeah, I got the toaster oven.
Yeah.
But I put mile after mile on that because my mantra now, this is a job for me, but I'm going to tell you that it's also a passion for me. And my sales pitch, for lack of a better term, is don't be me. Because I left a ton of benefits between the back issues, most likely hearing issues, and that's another thing we can cover, the high blood pressure issues. All those things for the state legislatures crafted that bill for us. If God bless you if you work at Home Depot or Publix, but you're not afforded the same rights that a first responder is. That heart bill is huge. And so it's not just a workers' comp. But if you are diagnosed with a heart-related issue, I encourage you to file that claim, keep that claim open. And obviously, I would like to see you, if you need representation, come to Bichler and Longo, but at the very least, seek legal representation. They've been doing this for over 30 years. Jeff Bichler has been doing workers' comp and first responder representation for almost 35 years. That's his specialty. That's what he founded the firm on. He was working someplace else and doing workers' comp and realized that this was a needed necessity in the community of first responders that was so underserved at the time. The law firm themselves have been instrumental in crafting the PTSD bill. There's some related issues coming up with judges interpreting the heart bill and what they think it interprets and not the true meaning of the heart bill. So they're working on getting that rectified in Tallahassee. So not only do they just represent us on you and me on a personal level with a workers' comp claim, they represent this entire community to try and make our benefits better, to try and make sure that we don't fall through the cracks and the loopholes that so many things when it comes to medical related issues do.
Yeah.
Because we know a good insurance company is a lot of times is not your friend.
No,
You
no.
know, whether it's a car accident, whether it's a medical, but workers' comp, I'm sure you talk to most people, you'll find most people are like, oh, they shudder when they hear workers' comp. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's bad enough that you get hurt. It's bad enough that you have a heart-related issue. But at the end of the day, they are not your friend. They're not going to represent you. Nobody told me about keeping claims open. Nobody told me that once they said, oh, that's pre-existing, that was the letter of the land and I had no recourse for that. I was young and ignorant and then old and ignorant. I'm going to be 50.
Right.
I'm going to be 58 years old. I'm definitely far from being a kid. And there's still stuff I'm learning and still stories I'm learning across the state from everybody else about their trials and tribulations with not only their agency but with workers' comp. Yeah. So that's what the law firm does.
Let's take a quick break. I want to go run and ask a question, and then I got a couple questions towards the end.
Okay,
we'll be right back. Yo, what's up, everybody? I want to let you know I have a new website format. Same website, donutshoppodcast.com, but this time I'm running it through Shopify. Make it much easier to purchase items because aside from the hats that I have up there, Donut Shop Podcast, PVC hats, the blue line snapback, laser mesh, nice and clean on the inside, comfy hats. I have some other swag, t-shirts, can koozies, just some other stuff that I put up there. I'm running the website through Shopify, and so it'll make it real easy for you guys to go on and purchase some stuff and support the show. So thanks for tuning in and following the show, and don't forget donutshoppodcast.com. Thanks.
So that's why I built InkMD, to address a niche, a very real need for medical grade wound care. For real wounds. Tattoos are real wounds. I don't understand why we continue to treat them differently. Nobody's bridged that gap yet. We're talking about relatively superficial trauma to the skin. The quicker it heals, the better. Especially with tattoos, because the amount of ink that's retained in your skin is dependent on that healing process. Real science, real medicine, with a very ancient and very personal art form.
Jump over inkmd.com and use DSP15 when you want to make a purchase. So, all right, we're back, and you started talking about, fire events and stuff like that. And I know our brothers and sisters over in the fire service, there's interesting things, and it's not just those obvious ones, the smoke inhalation, the lungs and stuff like that. There's things that I've seen lately dealing with even cancers and stuff that are coming from their bunker gear. The heat resistant gear, the chemicals that are used in it are sometimes affecting longtime firemen that are living in this to protect themselves from their job, is turning around and attacking them later in life or even currently in the job.
Absolutely. And it's a little, I guess, entertaining for lack of a better term, but one of the things I found, and it goes back to that pride, like, we are some of the most prideful people. We go to work no matter what, because there's people rely on us. And one of the things I found that's kind of ironic is the firemen, they don't like to have their bunker gear cleaned that much, because they go in a fire, hey, I was kicking ass, and putting the flames out, or searching for people, or searching for pets. They want to wear that, because
dirty bunker gear is a badge of honor.
And it turned out that in the long run, just like we're not addressing our back issues and our everyday issues, just we chalk it up, that's part of the job. That pride issue is also to the point where it can actually get them sick. So there are a lot of companies out there that watch that. So I tell the guy, look, I get it. And if I was on the fire side, I'd probably be wearing a dirty old jacket too. Look at me. We wear certain things with that badge, that that pride. But get that gear washed, because because at the end of the day, we want to do a great job. We want to impress the guys and girls on each side of us. We want to be known as a good cop. But all the sacrifices that we make throughout our career, there's a very small handful of people, and most of them share our last name.
Yeah.
Or share our bloodline, are just that inseparable zone unit guy you've known since the academy days. The rest of the guys, they appreciated it, but I can tell you firsthand, once you sign off, once you drop that radio and take that gun battle for the last time, you're just some guy that used to work there.
Yeah.
And then what matters? Your family, your health. We ignore a lot of that. And some of it is just from the pride, and some of it is through lack of knowledge about the benefits and the fear. And I hear a lot of that in, guys saying, hey, I would never go on workers' comp. I would never. They're butchers. They're this, they're that. But there's a lot of, there's some recourses. There's still not, obviously, fighting workers' comp is an uphill battle at times, but there's representation out there to make sure that you're getting all the benefits you can get. So my thing is to all sides, corrections, law enforcement, fire, probation, any certified state responder or first responder in the state of Florida, whether it's law enforcement, fire, anything under those umbrellas of first responder, make sure you're taking care of your health. And if you have a heart-related issue, file it under workers' comp, because you can keep that claim open, and they will be responsible for taking care of all those health issues, that medication. We partner with First Responder Pharmacy. They get all your medications sent to you. It's mail order, right? There's no going to the store anymore. There's no out-of-pocket expenses. Everything is covered to you, and we have a pharmacy that we partner with, that we do a lot of events with, that is very, very well known to the firm. They'll get any medications you need sent to you free. If there's an issue with any of your medications, all you do is call them. You're not the one calling the pharmacy. You're not the one calling workers' comp. You're not the one calling the doctor. They take care of that for you. A lot of people don't realize all those benefits that are out there. And the one thing I will say to especially the guys who are getting ready to retire, get a physical.
Yeah.
Make sure you're healthy when you leave, because the minute you leave the job, there are some benefits with the cancer side for firefighters. If they develop cancer within 10 years, it can still be covered. There's some caveats to that, where they have to be on their department's insurance for at least a limited amount of time once they separate from the agency.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be forever. And there's some questions, and we can, if you need to reach out to me or the firm, we can discuss that at the end for any questions. But get that physical, get the hearing checked.
That's a good idea.
People don't realize, that's one of those things you don't realize. We just think it's selective because who tells us our hearing's bad? Usually it's the wife, right? It's the spouse, the significant other, right? And they think we're just ignoring them. Sometimes we might.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, but get your hearing checked, because people don't realize that is under workers' comp. The things that we're exposed to, whether it's the sirens, whether it's the gunfire.
I've always attributed it to when I wore my radio on my left shoulder, and I'd be working the nightclubs or working the loud environments, the arena events and stuff, and I'd have it cranked up so I could hear,
or
it's blowing into your ear.
Or the guys are using the earpiece now. Even with that, you have to crank it up. The audiologists are finding guys are going to get their hearing, and girls are going to get their hearing checked, and the audiologist tell them, you wear a lapel mic on your left shoulder, don't you?
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, that's where. Oh, you wear it on your right, because they noticed a significant amount of hearing loss. And what people don't realize, like I said, we go back to that pride thing. It's just one more thing the job caused me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the job caused you that, so it's workers' compensatable. You should be compensated for that. Hearing aids aren't covered 100% under Medicare. They're very expensive, and they need to be replaced roughly every 2 years in order to be accurate. And they come up with all these new improvements and smaller and Bluetooth now. But they need to be replaced. They are extremely expensive. All right. If you walk away with that benefit on the table, workers' comp is just like, thank you. Thank you for saving us more money. Thank you for making us a more profitable company. All right, you're out. And we think, hey, that's just the game. That's the game I chose.
Yeah.
It's like bad guys, if they get hurt on the job, what do they always say? That's the life I chose.
Yeah.
Cops look at it maybe not, to the drug offender side of life, but we look, this is the life we chose.
Mm-hmm.
We chose this life of difficulty and all this. But the thing is, we didn't choose these medical abnormalities, these medical conditions, these medical diagnoses that come with it that affect us the rest of our life. There's a big reason why cops only live, roughly 6 years after retirement, 5.5 years. Hopefully we can improve on that. But there's a big reason, because we pay a high price to do the job we do. All right. And when it comes to the PTSD bill, all right, I know we haven't even scratched on that yet.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions about that, we can talk about that. That needs some improvements, but we're not utilizing that to the best of our ability.
And that's to your point of a lot of, on average, law enforcement officers are only surviving 6 years when you worked at 20, 25, 30, 40 years sometimes to get that pension, the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's sometimes a lot of the reasons why we get into this career field. And I think in today's day and age, in the first responder society, and now through podcasts and a lot of these people that are finding avenues to talk, we're trying to find ways to extend that life, either through mental health awareness, counseling, therapy outlets, and then physical with attending to our bodies and everything like that, physical fitness, all that. There's all these kind of people that are out there nowadays that are trying to get this message to us, and we need to open our ears more and understand it, especially before we leave the job, because sometimes, like you said, that is a marker where you can get benefits denied for you. We've heard it through a number of years with VA and with military guys trying to, the military community really trying to pump and push their guys to, get your disability ratings if there are injuries, problems that you deal with, especially after the fact, because, we see our aging veterans that are dealing with issues that came from nothing other than the fact that they were in a war, or they were in battle, or things that they did or were exposed to in the military that the average citizen wasn't exposed to. And so that's something. And as you've said from the beginning, benefits that exist, that are there for you to have. But if you don't know how to pick the apple off of the tree, then you're not going to use it, and it's going to go away. So you've mentioned a couple times PTSD and the PTSD bill, and like how that would work. Because I know I've had a coworker that did go out on PTSD, and sometimes that's a taboo topic, because some people are like, "Oh, bro, he did that shit to himself," this and that. But I think it was offline we were talking about it. It may not be that giant, gruesome, major, disgusting scene that caused you PTSD. It's like you have young children, and every time you've gone to a young child that's either sick, injured, or killed or abused, and then you've constantly had to deal with that, and then off to the next call, off to the next call, off to the next call. It's a compounding process that creates the PTSD in any of these fields. So
in order to claim the PTSD, there has to be at least one triggering event, something that you can link it back to that you saw. As far as, it is the compounding, the stress we see day in and day out, the things we're forced to do and see, that builds up the PTSD. There does need to be, basically, you need to say, for the actual claim, if you're going to claim it under, we all know we probably leave the job with a little bit of workers, with a little bit of PTSD issues, some more than others. But as far as making an actual claim, there has to be something that
the straw that broke the camel's back.
And getting the benefits while you're working is not as difficult as getting the benefits if you try and go out on like the PTSD disability.
Yeah.
Because getting the benefits, you claim, hey, look, I have PTSD, I saw this, I did this. You can get the counseling, you can get the benefits, the medications if needed. But the problem with this, the way the state bill is crafted, is there's very specific events that you had to be involved with and witness in order for that to qualify under the disability. There's several things, the death of a child,
Death of a coworker in front of you, probably.
It's even then it's touchy on what, and it's like, dismemberments, disembowelment, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to see that to claim the PTSD and get, benefits and get counseling and get medication while you're working. And if you're suffering from any of those issues, I know the old school thought is, just suck it up
Suck
and
it
go
up,
to
dude.
work. But I'm begging all of you people out there, because it's
Yeah, you can look right at that camera and bang them.
it's coming. It's here. We hear about it all the time. We're losing more officers to suicide than we are to bad guys. That has to stop, and it has to
Huge
start
group
with you.
of 6 over a course of a period of time in Texas, just this month.
And it's heart-wrenching. And, my own agency, not long after I left, we lost a female corrections officer to suicide. I didn't know her. I didn't know too many people from the corrections side at that point in my career,
Yeah.
but that still hurts.
Yeah.
That's in when you see it, you go an officer down, they don't list those guys. They list the guys and girls that are killed in the line of duty. All right. That's a slow, painful death in the line of duty. And we don't realize, we don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even know the things our spouses are going through, until they explode on us, and you find out it had nothing to do. How many times I don't have a lot of fights with my girl, but when we do, it turns out it had nothing to do with what we started the fight about. It's always all this underlying stuff that we didn't address. That's PTSD. That's mental health issues. So, guys and girls, please go out. All right. Ask for help. All right. The days of just suck it up and cinch the belt and just go about work is over with, because life in itself is so much more stressful now.
Yeah.
That, with just the way we live, the demands put on us in everyday life, and then we throw first responder demands on top of it. But if you need to address the PTSD bill, it is a difficult bill to address. I ask you to, if you need to, reach out, because getting the benefits while you're working are fairly easy, but getting the diagnosis that fits the way the state bill is written is very difficult, because what triggers you might not trigger me. I've seen some horrific things that I don't ever remember dreaming about, but some of my nightmares are some of the most mundane things, and they all ended with the scream of a mother saying no from a death notification. Every bad dream I've ever had, or snapshot of, I don't know what you call it, the PTSD, the nightmares, the tremors or whatever, ends with a woman screaming no, that only a mother is capable of screaming when you tell her child has died.
Yeah.
And so somebody else, that might not be a trigger for you. Yeah. But for some reason, whatever way I'm wired, that's my trigger for me. But the PTSD bill is out there. All right. It is for us. It is crafted for first responders. It needs some work. And once again, it goes back to the respect I have for the law firm, and specifically Jeff and Paolo and all the work they do, not just with their clients, but on the state level of getting these bills crafted. They were instrumental in the PTSD bill being crafted. They actually have the bill signed by the state legislatures on their wall in their office. That's how important it is to them. But what's more important than that is making sure that bill continues to be crafted in a way that it benefits us, because right now it's very difficult for first responders to get the disability portion of what that bill affords us. So Jeff and Paolo work tirelessly with the state legislatures. They don't just do clients, they meet with them, all right, and try and get them to make this bill, because we all know, all right, a lot of things that happen in Tallahassee, some have been beneficial in the last couple of years for us, but over the years, they haven't always been first responder friendly. Everything that comes out of the appellate courts is one more thing we can't do.
Right?
You can't search that car. You can't talk to this person this way. You can't arrest them for that. You can't tell them, you didn't read them Miranda, at the perfect millisecond while they were babbling, whatever it is. We know for years the bills have been crafted up there that make our job harder. One of the things that Jeff and Paolo are doing is trying to make getting the the benefits that we are afforded much easier.
And that's something that I find very important. And I'm not going to say that I do it all the time, and I did it for a period of my career when I was on the FOP board, is go up there and I urge officers, firemen, anybody in a community or in a job that's affected by laws made in the state legislature. You don't need to be a legislator. You don't need to learn everything about it, but you need to understand the way that these laws are created and how. And I'm working on trying to get a guy that I know who is a state legislator out of the Tampa area to come on the show, because it might not be interesting to you, but you need to learn about how it is, because when things come down, I even did this as recent when the I think there was a gun law, and I'm not talking about constitutional carry when that came in, but there was something about guns that came in, and you got to understand that you can go to the state Senate and the state house's the state website and read through the committees, because the committees are these small panels of legislators that listen to the public, that listen to lobbyists, that listen to law enforcement agencies, that listen to sheriffs, and they go up there and they explain how this is going to affect, what this is going to affect, that kind of thing. Because the state of Florida is a broad place. I live in an area that is kind of metropolitan to somewhat suburban, but a majority of the actual state is rural. You've driven all over the state.
Oh, yeah.
So, I remember one of the ones that when I was going up there, they were talking about a law about creating the ability to have gun ranges on your own personal property. And the way that the bill read, it went all the way up to the fact that there was no size limit of your property. Where I'm thinking, all right, cool. If I got 10 acres of property up in Northwest Florida, I'll just put a berm up. I got some trees. I'm going to pop off 223, AR-15, whatever, bazooka rounds, whatever's legal. I'm popping them off, and I'm going to put little sites up. But if I'm in a suburban community of a 0 lot line and I just put a pad of dirt, but I'm going to sit there even with a 9mm and just pop off rounds, you imagine how many calls we'd get on that type of situation? So when we were up there, we were talking, when we would meet with our local representatives, like, listen, you need to lobby and you need to make points for our community where we are in Broward County, that kind of stuff isn't going to fly. You need to see if you can pair it to size of property and not just make it a blanket statement. Because some guy that wants to build a garage gun range in my town or my city, I don't need that.
Yeah, everything was good on that bill until the very last line that basically said if you're doing it to target practice, c'est la vie.
Yeah. So you know exactly what
I know. I dealt with it a lot, especially in community policing, because those are the ongoing problems. And then you get to the point where somebody stops reading because they see, it has to be over what acre. I forget, because I'm retired now. I don't have to know all these things. But I have a different bill. But it was what I think over is the lots all had to be over an acre. They were under an acre. You couldn't. But I said, no, you didn't read far enough down. There's that catch-all.
Yeah.
And with a lot of laws, not just the range law, but there's a lot of laws. Like I said, there's that little line in there that either makes it difficult to enforce or difficult to interpret. And then when you open up something for interpretation, much like the workers' comp issues that they're running into now, it's very difficult. And we all know that the insurance industry has a lot of lobbyists.
They have a lot of lobbyists. They pay a lot of money, and they want to make a lot of money. So, and that's just to my point of to all of us. And I, we all know there's way too much information that we need to ingest as first responders, because we need to learn defensive tactics, safety, laws, local laws, all that. There's so much that we need to learn. But I think that one of those things that helped me out in my career to understanding the laws that I needed to learn is how they're made. I like to know where my sausage comes from and how the sausage is made. So we don't realize that's where the laws are made, is up there in Tallahassee. So, go up there with your union, whether it's law, FOP, PDA, IUPA, whoever. Go up there when they're day on the Hill, meet your local representatives, talk to those people, and sit in some of those committee meetings, the subcommittees and then the full committees, just so you can really learn the arguments that these guys are creating. Because just like cops, we don't know everything. Those lawmakers don't know everything. Nope. They just know who's in their ear. So if you're in their ear, making a point for
Exactly.
PTSD, speaking on personal cases of why you have this PTSD and helping them relate, they're able to sit up there on their stage and go for you. If they don't know about you, then how are they going to fight for you as your local representative? And that, people always say, write your congressman, that's what that's for. But if you can get in their face and actually do it professionally as like a assistant to a lobbyist and talking to them, you have way more effect than just firing off that email that gets read by a clerk or somebody sitting in their office, and then they push that off to the side. If you're knocking on the door and say, I'd like a meeting with Representative so-and-so, and they're in and they can afford you that meeting and they have that time, just go have 5 minutes of a conversation with them. It's cool.
And it can be influential. They said the big problem with a lot of those bills is that every committee adds, subtracts something. So it might start out as this great, simple, easy to read, interpret, enforce law.
Yeah.
Bill, anything like that, but then everybody gets their hands in it, and
pork belly, I think is what it's called.
They throw the pork in there, and it's like, and then that's where you start hearing about bills that it might be a bill for the environment, and it has something about the internet attached to it.
Yeah,
but
social media.
I'll just slide this in under this and get it passed, and then the argument, hey, you want me to vote for your, for your environmental bill? No problem, but I'm going to add this, and then you'll get my vote. And we all know that's how it works.
So, and the biggest thing is because then when you watch the news, some reporter is going to go, the environmental bill failed. And then people get all up in arms. Oh, the damn environmental bill, you Republicans, you Democrats, you whatever. But you didn't.
Too much finger pointing.
If you go in and you read the subcommittees, you go, what does TikTok have to do with an environmental bill? I bet you this is why it failed. Exactly. And if you read between the lines or on the lines, it's like, oh man. So we forget about that kind of stuff, or even just are ignorant to it.
Yep.
So I think it's cool that the law firm stays involved in that kind of stuff, because they've got firsthand knowledge of the Workmans Comp cases and what they're seeing in court and how these bills and how this information can affect what they're doing in court. So
right. And the one thing that about them is they do have a difficult hill to climb, because unlike your personal injury attorneys, where you can't drive down any road and see billboards and drive past, and I won't throw names under the bus, but I do a lot of trips to Orlando, and you see the side of the bus covered, so-and-so got me $7 million. This is the only way they advertise. Our job is firsthand word of mouth. It's almost like I'll date myself, the old Suave hair commercials, you tell two friends and so on. That's how our message gets spread. Our message gets spread through one golf tournament, one Kagan's Climb at a time. It gets spread through meeting with the FOP representatives at the conferences.
Coming on the Donut Shop.
And that's what it does, because like I said, when I tell, and myself included, my mantra is, my sales pitch, for lack of a better term, is don't be me, because I did not educate myself on all the workers' comp related benefits, the heart bill. I used to joke with my woman, now remember, if I wake up in the morning and I'm doing the chest pain, make sure you get me in the uniform, get me in the car and yell 10-8. There's nothing further from the truth about that the heart bill covers us no matter what. But people, like I said, it goes back to, we share our medications, but nobody shared the knowledge of, hey, there's benefits to be had for this, and not just benefits, not just like, oh, you're entitled to this, you're entitled to, entitlements, right? We hear that term being thrown around a lot. This is a right and benefit you've earned as a first responder. So my message to our first responders, especially the guys, if I could have the old me have a conversation with the young me, I would say, look, first of all, verse yourself on the heart bill, and if you're on the fire rescue side, verse yourself on the lung bill, because that applies to you. But the heart bill covers everything: the high blood pressure, the AFib, the stents, all that is covered, as you very well know. But you also didn't know that the benefits of keeping that open. All right, workers' comp just licked their lips when they got away with $1,600 buyout on that. It was worth significantly more than that. So educate yourself on those bills. All right, the heart-lung bill, the repetitive injury bills, or not the bills, but the repetitive injuries, the back, the knees, the stuff that just over time, the job that we do wears us out. All right, and obviously the just regular workers' comp. You get in a car wreck, you don't have to settle for pre-existing. All right. If you're hurt, you didn't think you got the right care, you have a right to challenge that. You have a right to say, hey, you know what? You're being taken care of. Somebody's representing you. You have high-priced people that craft your policy. Who do I have? I may or may not have an HR person that either is not working in my best interest or doesn't know enough about workers' comp to work in my best interest. Mm-hmm. So not only do we educate ourselves, we educate each other. We educate the young guys. I used to talk a lot about investing to the young guys. You know, yeah, the 420, was it the 429 plans and all that are great, but no, you talk to them about a Roth and they're like, what? So we need to educate our young guys, because if young guy Jimmy Dean, when he first started, knew about all my rights with workers' comp, I would have kept my car accident cases open. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have just settled for what workers' comp said was pre-existing conditions, or you're healed, or go back to work. I would have filed the first time I had high blood pressure diagnosis, you know, all those things, because that bill has been around almost as long as I've been a deputy. So it's been around a lot longer than people are aware of. It's not a new bill. The heart-lung bill is not a new bill. All right. Get your hearing checked, especially if you're getting ready to retire. If you have any lack of hearing, get it documented and file a workers' comp claim.
Yeah,
those benefits are out.
Appointments I got to make.
Exactly.
I got 9 months. I got to bang out some appointments.
But like I said, we do this. We don't do this through, you don't see us on TV. Mm-hmm. You don't see us on billboards. You don't see us on the side of buses. We do this through, this is like small batch whiskey thing.
I like
right? Somebody, you know, if you're a small batch, you know, we all know Jack Daniels and Jim Beam and all the other big stuff, but we don't know about, you know, Joe's Craft Blended Whiskey, and it's probably one of the best you've ever had. But if you taste it and then you tell me, and then I tell my friends, our advertising is the same way. We do it one golf tournament at a time, one Kagan's Climb at a time, one FOP conference at a time, one fire rescue conference at a time. We continue to do that. I spread my message. My message is don't be me. Mm-hmm. My message is that educate yourself, and not only educate yourself, but you know, we train our young kids when they get hired. We kind of mentor them a little bit. Include this in your mentoring, all right? Because they don't, you know, you don't think when you're starting on the job, you don't even think about 25 years down the road. You just think about grabbing the next call. You don't even want to go home.
Like I said, the $1,600 was more valuable to me than my thought process of what could the AFib develop into in the future. It was like, oh, $1,600, I could use this. This is like a little holiday check.
And just reaching out to a lawyer is free.
Yeah.
They can give you advice. I was talking to Paolo, and he told me, I believe he has over 400 open cases. Just people that have filed their claims that he monitors. He's there for consulting. He just makes sure that they do their follow-ups. He's not actively working 400 claims right now, but at some point, every one of those claims is going to need to be satisfied. And it goes back to what we talked about. Who remembers that you were the guy that went in when your back was just on fire, you know, or that you're limping around like you're 80 years old because you twisted your knee, but you're too short-handed to go home. Your boys and girls on each side of you are relying on you to be there. Yeah. All right. But at the end of the day, all right, you file that claim, you'll still be that dedicated. It doesn't, everybody's like, oh, workers' comp. You don't have to be out of work on workers' comp. Mm-hmm. All right. That's one of the fallacies that they talk about, you know, oh, workers' comp, you know, there's some of the doctors questionable. Yeah. Every profession's going to have questionable people. Do they have good people? But getting some legal representation to make sure that not only that you're giving any benefits, but that you're being physically taken care of. And that goes back to why I took the job with them. One of the things that really sold me on them wasn't just about getting people in the door. It wasn't just about get me clients, get me clients, get me clients. It was about educating people, about letting people know what benefits are out there for them. It wasn't just about them fighting for me at the time, because I was still working in Tallahassee. It was about the fact that I really feel like they care.
Yeah.
I really feel like they care about not just the clients they serve, but the community that they reach out to. All right. There's several firms out there that specialize in first responders. And if you have legal representation, that's great. They're the originals. They're Jeff Bichler is the OG.
Okay.
For lack of a better term, he's
Yeah.
the OG of first responder workers' comp. Palo's not long behind them, but what sold me on them was their passion for not just the workers' comp, but all the other related issues, to making sure that we're taken care of, to making sure that we survive our mental health issues, making sure that the fun stuff that's so important to us that does nothing to their bottom line.
Yeah.
Supporting a PTSD fundraising event, I'm going to be honest with you, probably does zero to their bottom line. But that's what sold me, their passion for, hey, there's things that you do because it keeps the doors open, and there's things you do because they're the right thing to do for the community that we're involved with. And we all know, we saw in 2020 what happens when you don't back your first responders, and you don't back the community that you live in. We've seen firsthand that pendulum already has started to swing back the other way, where what happens if we don't take care of our law enforcement and our first responders.
Okay.
That did not work at all. And that's kind of their mentality. Let's take care of these guys. Let's represent them when they need to be represented, but let's take care of them when they need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that was where I was like, where do I sign?
Awesome. You said you wanted to do a pitch. Was that your pitch, or you said you wanted to throw something else out there?
Well, the one thing I will tell you is their services are absolutely free. If you need a consult, they're free of charge. These cases, like I said, that Palo reference where he has 400 open, he makes nothing on those. They don't make any money until they settle your case. So people don't realize that every workers' comp case has basically a impairment rating to it. And with that impairment rating, which is what the doctor says, oh, the impairment rating is...
Mine said it was 1%.
1%.
Yeah.
All right. Now they're going to argue it's probably higher than 1%. But that 1% also comes with a cost that workers' comp basically says we're going to need X amount of dollars to treat your 1% AFib impairment.
Yeah.
They hope that you don't ever spend anywhere near that money. But that money is set aside for you because basically that's a lifelong injury or illness. So they're going to have to cover that the rest of your life. They're hoping that you would educate yourself, or they're hoping you take pennies on the dollar. But when it comes time to settle that case, that's when the partners and that's when the attorneys at the firm make their money, when they get an actual settlement for you, whether it's you were wages weren't paid properly, you weren't compensated properly for time off during the event, or to basically divorce yourself from workers' comp. You have a right to keep that claim open your entire career and your entire life.
Yeah.
Just because you're retired doesn't mean the workers' comp case is closed. You can keep that going and get compensation for the rest of your life.
Okay.
Or you can take a settlement on that and say, I'll take care of it through other means, but you're going to have to pay me for me leaving the workers' comp field. And that's when they come in and they negotiate, like I said, probably significantly more than like a $1,600 buyout. But so my sales pitch, or my closing thing, I guess I can say, is this is how the information gets spread. It's word of mouth. I'm one guy. I know the firm comes out, the partners come out and do events. They are extremely a hardworking group of individuals. I will travel anywhere. So if there's anybody out there that has a problem, question about this, I ask them if they need legal advice, they can reach out to the law firm, and that phone number is 407-599-3777. And once again, I am their first responder marketing rep. I will go anywhere in the state to give this speech because I hope you got a little bit of a feel where, yes, I have a job to do, but at the end of the day, I have a passion, and that passion, once again, I'm beating a dead horse, is don't be me. All right. be educated me, be post-retirement me. Don't be it's too late for me.
Yeah.
So, but I will come out. We do events. We talked about golf tournaments, but there's anything out there. I don't care.
Well, he's got the
Bowling,
he's-
horseshoe, cornhole
Yeah.
tournaments. I saw one of the agencies over on my coast is doing a cornhole tournament. I'll be out of the country during that.
Yeah.
But those are things I go out because if I meet 2 or 3 people from an agency, those are 2 or 3 people that maybe got information that they didn't have before that event, before they sat down and talked to me. And then those 2 or 3 people can educate more people in their agencies, their unions, their membership. So I will come out. I will do anything. Like I said, I do all their marketing. So if you want to contact me directly, you can on my cell phone. It's 352-587-3315. And that's my work cell phone. That goes directly to me. And the one thing I'm going to end up with for the firm is I'm going to tell you that their website sold me. I told you when I talked to Christine, I was intrigued, but I wasn't sold. But when I went back and I looked at their website and read some of their case law and read kind of their mantra of what the law firm does and what they represent, and it's not just about that, that $10,000 PIP policy that, those, slip and fall, injured billboard stuff. If you go to bichlerlaw.com, that's BICHLER, bichlerlaw.com, you can read all about the criteria of the attorneys and see their qualifications. I assure you everyone is qualified, but more importantly, you can kind of get a feel for what they do beyond the courtroom, or what they do beyond, the Zoom call or the call to complain about workers' comp. You can kind of get a feel for their passion for protecting the community that we all love and serve, or continue to serve in most cases out there.
Yeah, I looked at it, and there's the testimonials there as well, from irrecognizable stuff, not stuff that was probably AI generated, and it's just like Susie says, "Gee, thanks, they helped me after this accident," or whatever. It's like FOP Lodge 65, Naple, or I'm throwing numbers and names together, but it's like so and so they did this, and it's like I would believe it's a legitimate thing
and
that I can relate to.
And not to interrupt you, but I can assure, because I did the same thing. I started to go through testimonials and case law, and I started to actually see names of people that I'd worked with way back 33 years ago during my early days as a corrections officer in Pasco. And I'm like, I recognize him. And sure enough, one guy I had my phone, I called him up, and he just raved about what they got for him. He had a heart-related issue. So yeah, it is not the AI. It's not the Amazon reviews. Go out and buy this. But like I said, it's and that's one of the things, I think you lose some integrity putting your mug on the side of I guess it's great for advertising and probably great for business, but that's why you don't see us on the side of billboards. You see us doing things like this, face-to-face, word of mouth, at tournaments, at local fundraisers, at community events. I love being a part of that. I enjoyed so much that part in my career, being in my community. I love going to other communities and meeting people, but that's enjoyment for me. But passion is meeting that first responder. He goes, and having that look on his face where he says, I didn't know that. And I said, well, good news is now you do, and you have not only a friend, but you have allies willing to work with you. And that's what I think that I think I'm an integral part of this team, because I think I'm a good mouthpiece. I think I'm a good person, that I'm not just some guy that they hired to be like, hey, get us boot traffic, get us people in the door. They can do some sort of marketing blitz and probably get that done. What works for us is that word of mouth, face to face. And like I said, the enjoyment for me is not somebody that calls the firm, although I appreciate that, but somebody has an issue right then and there. But it's somebody that says, wow, man, I didn't know that. I'm going to keep that in mind. And hopefully he never needs it. Hopefully he never has an art issue, or she never has any sort of workers'
PTSD.
comp related issues are PTSD. You know, that's kind of the little brother thing. We don't always talk about it as much, you know, but yeah, watch out for each other. You know, we protect each other. All right. And what do we always say? Knowledge is power. So if I can educate people, I make them more powerful. They go on, they educate, you know, the new kids coming up, or even the senior guys like myself that didn't know about this stuff. It's more people that have power, because workers' comp does not want you to have that power, and HR doesn't always realize or refuses to tell you how much power you actually have to represent yourself.
All right. Well, cool, bro. And thank you. And that's exactly what I want to do. Some people might watch this and be like, the hell is he talking to? You know, like just give it a bad thing, like an insurance salesman or something like that. I felt that, you know, and we've probably beat it down, like as the dead horse saying goes, but it's important. So I felt it was important. I've known this guy for a little while now, and it's cool to kind of hear those resources are available for us, and that's what I wanted to do in this podcast. So here we are. So thanks for watching. I'll throw all that information, the phone numbers and stuff, the websites for the law firm in the description that go on all the videos and audio for this. And thank you very much for coming out.
Hey, I appreciate the time and the platform.
Of course.
And not only to you guys, but all these my brothers and sisters out there. All right. Stay safe. Take care of each other. Have each other's backs. All right. And enjoy retirement.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Make it there.
Get there.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.